Good afternoon, everyone. I now call to order the hearing of the Assessment Review Board to order for July 15th, 2026 at 1:01 p.m. Please note that today's hearing is being streamed live and recorded on YouTube. Attendees acknowledge names, addresses, and other details provided when speaking in today's hearing will be publicly shared. Should you have any questions, please contact Legislative and Advisory Services Division for the Town of High River by sending an email to atip@highriver.ca. First, I would like to introduce myself. I am Renee Clements, Chair of the Assessment Review Board for the 2026 term, and I'm serving as the presiding officer in today's local Assessment Review Board hearing. At this time, I will introduce or allow my fellow board members to introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Taylor Cameron. I'm a member of the Assessment Review Board.
My name is Hank Lee Frank. I'm a member as well.
The matter before the board today is a merit hearing regarding the following roll numbers and property addresses. Roll number 801-3900, located at 38 Sunrise Place Northeast, and roll number 816100, located at 64 Sunrise Place Northeast. These properties are owned by Paul and Sarah Jane Bloomfield. This hearing will consider the complainant filed and the evidence presented by both parties respecting the assessed value. I will now ask those present to introduce themselves for the record. We will begin with board administration, followed by the complainant, and then the respondent.
Good afternoon. I am Jody Hipkin, co-chair with my colleague,
Alicia Pollitt.
Complainant.
Hi, my name is Paul Blomfield, and I am the complainant.
Good afternoon. My name is Stuart Dalrymple, representing the respondent.
My name is Brandon Garner. I'm an assessor with the Town of High River.
Thank you. Before we begin, I'll briefly outline the hearing process. This is a quasi-judicial hearing, and the board will consider the evidence and submission presented by both parties. All parties are expected to provide truthful and accurate information, as the board will rely on this in making their decision. All questions are to be directed through the chair, and the complainant will present their case, followed by the respondent. The complainant will then be able to present their rebuttal. Each party will have the opportunity to ask any questions of each other or one another, and the board may ask questions at any time. We will conclude the closing submissions, and any evidence not disclosed in accordance with the required timelines may not be accepted by the board. Before we proceed, are there any preliminary matters from either party, such as questions about the hearing process and how the hearing will proceed?
Not from me.
No questions from the respondent. Thank you.
Thank you. Concerns about potential conflict of interest or bias with any of the board members?
Again, not for me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and none here too. Thank you.
Thank you. Concerns about documents and evidence that were submitted or not received?
Again, no from me.
And none from the respondent either. Thank you.
Requests to have someone speak on your behalf or assist during the hearing? I'm assuming no, because we are all present. And any other procedural issues that should be addressed before we begin discussing the property assessment?
All good here. Thank you.
Yep, all good. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I will now invite the complainant to present their case, and you may proceed whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning to everybody on the board and to the respondents and everyone else present. Thank you for the opportunity to present our appeal regarding the 2026 assessments for 38 and 64 Sunrise Place Northeast. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the town has reviewed our complaint corrected errors relating to garage and suite sizes and reduced both assessments, and we appreciate those corrections. However, we respectfully submit that the amended assessments of 418,400 and 421,300 still do not represent market value as of July 1st, 2025, as required under the Municipal Government Act. Our appeal is not about whether the town is permitted to use the market-adjusted depreciated cost model. We accept that it is an approved mass appraisal methodology. Our concern is that for this particular group of properties, the model has produced values that are inconsistent with the actual market evidence. The strongest evidence of market value is the sale of 50 Sunrise Place Northeast. It sold for $380,000 on May the 9th, 2025, just 7 weeks before the legislated valuation date. Because it occurred so closely to July 1st, it required virtually no time adjustment. Despite this, the town's own amended assessment for that property is approximately $416,300, or about 109% of its actual sale price. We submit that when the best comparable sale immediately preceding the valuation date is assessed significantly above what a willing buyer actually paid for it, it raises serious questions about whether the assessment reflects market value. The town's disclosure also shows that the valuation model relies heavily on sales from 2022 through 2024. Those older sales required time adjustments ranging from approximately 11% to 46% before being used in the model. These adjustments increase nearly every historical sale to values that exceed what buyers have actually paid on Sunrise Place. One example illustrates this clearly. The property at 32 Sunrise Place Northeast sold twice. It sold for $339,500 in February of 2023, and again for $398,600 in April of 2024. That represents actual market appreciation of approximately 17.4%. However, the town's adjustment curve appears to apply an increase of roughly 26% over the same period. In other words, the model assumes significantly greater market appreciation than the market itself actually demonstrated. Another important observation is that 7 of the 8 adjusted Sunrise Place sales are adjusted upwards to values above the $398,600. And yet $398,600 was the highest price ever actually paid for a Sunrise Place property before the valuation date. The model is therefore producing adjusted values that exceed the highest prices buyers were willing to pay in the real market. We also note that 42 Sunrise Place Northeast sold for $375,000 in January of 2026. And while we recognize that this sale occurred after the valuation date and is not direct evidence of a July 1st sale at $375,000, it does provide a useful check on whether the town's market trend was realistic. If the market was continuing to rise, as the town suggests, it's difficult to reconcile that with a sale at $375,000 only 6 months later, while assessments remain above $418,000. Taken together, these sales consistently indicate a market level well below the amended assessments. Throughout this process, we have not argued that the town's methodology is unlawful. Rather, we submit that the methodology has overestimated market appreciation for this specific group of attached villas. The actual market evidence does not support assessments in excess of $418,000. Instead, it supports a value much closer to the observed sales immediately before and after the valuation date. Our original complaint requested a value of $360,000. We acknowledge that the evidence may support a value somewhat above that amount. However, the evidence before the board does not support values of $418,400 and $421,300. And therefore, we respectfully ask the board to determine an assessment that is supported by the actual market evidence rather than by adjusted values that exceed what purchasers have demonstrated they are willing to pay. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now ask the respondent if they have any questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I might have missed hearing, or I guess to clarify, what is the request through the chair? What is the requested assessment for the two condos in Sunrise Place, that being 38 Sunrise Place and 64 Sunrise Place?
When can I continue, Madam Chair? When we had originally submitted our complaint had asked for an assessment value of $360,000. Through this process that we have gone through, and through what has been clearly demonstrated to me through the gathering of more information, I accept that the properties are worth around $380,000. So that's now the property value that we're looking to have them reduced to. Especially considering that particular property sold 7 weeks prior to the actual date.
Just to confirm for the record, that's for both roll numbers.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I will now ask the respondent to present their case, and you may proceed at any time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. A pleasure to speak to you today to respond to the complaint for 38 Sunrise Place and 64 Sunrise Place, previously identified here. I do have the assessment information on page 53 of. So we got the original assessment for 38 Sunrise Place at $430,200. It's near the back.
Which one? You want the map?
No, it's near the back of in the addendum. I've got page 53 of my submission, or our submission. Sorry. We don't have to go there. I can just refer to it, but it's just that it was included just for information. It'll be near the end. Okay. There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this is 38. So this is the original assessment. So as I scroll down the page, that was $430,200. And then the next page is the proposed amendment, which we'll get to at $421,300. And then the next page is the original assessment for 64 Sunrise Place at $426,900. And then the next page would be the amended proposed assessment for 64 Sunrise Place Northeast at $418,400. Thank you, Jody. So we can just go back to page 3, I guess. Will be good. Although we could start. Yeah, page 3 is good. That'd be awesome. Thank you. Sorry. So this is just to go through our submission. Page 3 just identifies, it's just the Assessment Review Board receipt of complaint and notice of hearing. It's the same for both properties as identified, number 38 and 64. Page 6 is just a complaint for the 38 Sunrise Place. Page 7 just shows the relative location of Sunrise Place in High River. So on the top of the page, we've got overall map of High River with the blue rectangle highlighted representing the area of Sunrise Place. And then at the bottom of page 7, the blue highlighted area is Sunrise Place in of itself. And then just north of Sunrise Place is Mundy Park, which is not a condo, but the one area immediately north of Mundy Park is Sunvale Place, which will be included in this presentation. And then immediately west of Sunvale Place is Sunvale Crescent, which are similar units, just for information. So the highlighted areas, Sunrise Place, were in the northeast. And then on page 8, shows the relative location of number 38, Sunrise Place, on the east side of that development, and 64 almost immediately across the way. So I think it's turning to page 9. The following table shows the factual information regarding these two properties. And we'll get into I'll discuss the legal information in a minute. So the top of it shows the site area at 124.9 for both, and the site area, and in square feet, it shows, that should be square feet, sorry, at 1344 square feet for both units. That's the total size. With the respective suite size of number 38 being originally at 1,060, with the garage at 274 for a total of 1,334. And then for number 64, the suite size on the original assessment is 1,037, with the garage at 307, again with the total at 1,344. The original assessment of number 38 is 432,200, and of 64 is 426,900, with the relative value per square foot shown at the bottom. So this is the assessment information and property information used for the 2025 assessment. So reflecting a value as of July 1, 2025, physical condition as of December 31st. So page 10, just some pictures of 32 Sunrise Place included for information. So the top of page 32 is a picture, street side of 32 Sunrise Place. Shows the building with a single car garage, same as on the bottom, just with a side view as well. The photo at the top of page 11 shows the suite from behind looking toward the front door. At the bottom of page 11 shows the kitchen and the living area relative to each other. Page 12 shows a picture of the kitchen. Bottom of page 12 shows the kitchen from the living room. At top of page 13 shows the master suite, and the bottom of page 13 is bathroom. I believe that's the ensuite. And on top of page 14, we have the additional bathroom, and then we have the laundry room at the bottom of page 14. Top of page 15, we show the back of this unit, and again, just the back and the side of the unit on the bottom of page 15. So, upon reviewing the inquiry from the owner regarding the suite, we were brought to our attention that we needed to check the size of the unit relative to the sizes of the garage. For this particular development, there are, let me see, I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 condo plants. So it's built in stages. And we were able to obtain the blueprints also. So up and across the top, we've got the role, the address, the legal. It says the condo plan total, meters squared. And then in the pink area there, that is the original garage size, original suite size, and original totals post that we used for the 2026 assessment that was mailed. And then for the green areas, so the condo plan total, that's the total size. And then we have the amended garage size, and then the amended suite size. So the garages for these suites are not all identical. Like, it's a little bit different in some situations, but there's not much in it. So to do this proper, all the blueprints are pulled, and we've adjusted the suite size and the garage size so that they're proper. The garages aren't all identical, but we looked at them all specifically and made the appropriate adjustment. So there's quite a few suites in there, but if we're going to do this for the appeal, it's a perfect opportunity to do it for the rest for next year, and make sure we start off with for a clean slate next year. Again, this development was built. What's the original age?
2012, I believe.
2012. So back in the day, there are different ways to do assess condos. We typically use the schedule. I don't have any of the condo plans printed, but typically on a condo plan, it comes with a schedule of sizes for the condo plan, and it just shows a footprint, and it doesn't show where the garage walls are. Like, it could be anywhere. So that's why we had to refer to the blueprints to make sure that we get the size of the suite proper, because the garage isn't such a big deal because it's just a garage. It doesn't have a great value per square foot. But for the suite, we're showing a value in the $400 range a square foot. So if we're out 5, 10, or 15 square feet, it makes a significant difference. So it's very important to get the sizes correct, especially for the suite. So we've been through each of these. We've gleaned the blueprints to make sure these sizes are correct. I'd be happy to talk if the complainant has any questions about sizes down the road. Happy to, or anybody has questions about how those sizes were determined, we can happy to review that with them as well. But we did our due diligence to make sure we're starting on a clean slate here, especially if we're talking about an amended assessment. Foundation of assessment is having correct data. So we always endeavor to do that to the best of our ability. So just to show you then, for number 38 Sunrise Place, the overall size didn't change, but this slightly changed. The garage, the suite went from 1,060 to 1,062. The garage went from 274 to 273 for number 38. For number 64, the overall size didn't change, but the size of the suite did. It would change from 1,334 square feet to 1,049, and the garage changed from 262 to 286. So number 64 changed quite a bit, but not for 38. On page 17, this shows the salient facts as were presented before, showing the original 2025 assessment and the respective suite and garage sizes for each of those in that case, and the assessment. And then highlighted in red at the bottom of this information is the amended size of the suite and the garage for an amended total assessment for 421,300 for number 38 and 418,400 for number 64. So the respective value per square foot is $397 a square foot for number 38 and $399 for number 64. So the following pages, so pages 18 through to 22, is legislation specific to assessment. The process of assessment is fairly heavily regulated, and for good reason, to make sure the assessments are calculated consistently, not only within the Town High River and following legislation, but throughout the province. Some of the main items that we touched upon today would be the second item on page 16 from the top. It reflects that the assessment must reflect the condition of the property as of December 31st. The second column second row from the bottom, market value is the standard with which the assessments have to adhere to. Market value is defined as what might be expected what might be expected to realize if a property is sold on the open market by a willing seller to a willing buyer. And at the bottom of this page, an assessment of a property based on market value for assessment purposes must be prepared using mass appraisal, must be an estimate of the value of the fee simple estate in a property, and must reflect typical market conditions for properties similar to that property. Not identical to the property, but similar to the property. The process of assessment is mass appraisal, so which means the process of preparing assessment for a group of properties using standard methods and common data and allowing for statistical testing. So an assessment of property for market value, which is the discussion of this appeal today, the assessment prepared for the 2025 assessment and in the amended assessment proposed is prepared based on property market value using mass appraisal, not actual sales or pinpointed values, but it's prepared using mass appraisal and the fee simple estate of a property, and must reflect typical market conditions similar to the property. So the assessment is, in every case for the models, is always, the model represents the value for a group of properties. The quality standards we're required to adhere to is the third row from the bottom. Very heavily regulated, these quality standards must be met when we submit the assessment information to the province. On page, where does it say that? Just a minute. I can't find it, but it says models must be met and it's a statistical test. So the statistical test for residential assessments must be between 0.95 and 1.05, or 95 to 105%. So the valuation model for a group of properties must, a sales to assessment ratio, median sales to assessment ratio for the assessments in that group must be within that quality range. Just a minute. And there it is at the top. So the valuation date, this is also an important point. Any assessment prepared in accordance with the Act must be an estimate of the value of a property on July 1 of the assessment year. So that's the year before the tax year, and that's July 1, 2025. And that's different from an appraisal too, because the appraisal can be any specific date, but for assessment it's always July 1 of the year before the tax year. Just turning to page 23. Just to explain at the top, data collection and verification, that every municipality in Alberta, following regulations, must review and the assessments of properties in the town every 5 years, just to make sure we keep on top of any property changes, renovations, or permitted development. So there's a re-inspection cycle that helps to make sure that the data is up to date and correct. And then just the bottom part there is just assumptions and limiting conditions. On page 24, speaks to the purchase to value. For residential assessments, the appropriate assessment method is a direct comparison approach, or sometimes called the sales comparison approach. And it's defined as for the valuation of residential properties in High River, the direct comparison approach is used. This method of valuation determines a property's value by comparing it to similar, recently sold properties in the same geographic area. Again, it says similar properties, not identical properties. So, page 25 speaks to the difference between single property appraisal and mass appraisal. So, single property appraisal is a valuation of one property for many different purposes. It uses the valuation date is determined by the appraiser, so it could be any date. Typically, in an appraisal, 3 to 5 comparable sales are reviewed, as close in location, style, quality, and construction to the subject property as possible to arrive at an estimate of value based on those comparables used. So it's different to mass appraisal, A mass appraisal is a valuation of an entire group of property for taxation purposes. The valuation date is July 1st, in July the 1st, with the condition of the property as of December 31st in the year preceding the tax year. A valuation model is developed for each property group with similar style and quality of construction. An equitable and consistent estimate of value is derived for each property group. Valuation model is statistically tested for accuracy. That's what I was looking for. And after meeting the required provincial quality testing, is submitted to ACID. So ACID is the overlying umbrella in Alberta through municipal affairs, and it must pass those quality standards before and to go through 2 stages of audit, and then the town can be approved to use that assessment for the assessment notices. On page 26 is just an explanation of the mass appraisal process. How the assessment models are tested is to take the assessment divided by a selling price, and that gives us an assessment to sales ratio, which we call the ASR. So through the stratification of similar properties and the respective sales, value models are developed, with the resulting assessed values being required to meet that regulated quality standard of 95% to 105%. Typically, in the town, High River, we usually aim for 98%. If we go for the 95%, it's really close to the bottom of the valuation scale. And it doesn't really matter so long as it's a consistent process. We could develop an assessment at 105%, and for the distribution of the taxes for assessment purposes, the taxes wouldn't change because the level of assessment remains consistent. But we always go, if we always go for 98%, if we went for 100%, it's just a harder assessment to present. So in High River, as of December 31st, 2025, of the 1,324 condo properties in town, there were 381 sales from July 1, 2022 to July 1, 2022 to June 30th, 2025. So this is all of the condo sales. This is just showing us an example of how the assessment will look and how it meets quality standard. These sales were verified as suitable indicators of value with respective valuation models being developed and statistically tested, with the overall results as follows. Each of the red bars below represents a respective assessment divided by a selling price of each sale, with the overall ASR shown with the yellow arrow there at 98.1%, thus meaning required provincial quality standard. Now these sales are all the condos. So 1,324 condos, 381 sales. All these sales represent all the groups. It's this shown here is to show you how the model process works. This is not how we develop the model, it's just illustrative. But it does show that for all of those sales from each of the respective model groups, it meets a quality standard. On page 27, on the table at the top of the page, the titled ratio versus adjusted selling price. The purple line there represents the assessment at 98%. You'll see there are the distribution of the sales, which is each of these red dots represents the assessment divided by a selling price of each of the 381 sales. So it shows the distribution of those sales around the assessment. So that's what mass appraisal is intended to show, or develop a value model that represents a typical market, or we call that the median market, the middle of the market. So obviously some assessments will be higher than the selling price, and some will be lower, but the assessment reflects the middle of the market. And the table at the bottom just shows the relationship between the assessment and the selling price, and then the width of the distribution of those red dots is called the coefficient of dispersion. It just shows the range. And actually that's a really important point to make, because the assessment represents a range of value, not the value. So for assessment purposes, the maximum COD can be 15. That's quite a widespread. So the regulation states for this kind of assessment should be about 8. So it's a fairly tight range. But that said, we're required to be within 95 and 105. So that's a range. And then within each group, there's also a range. So when references are made to a specific sale at a specific time, it's just one sale within a range. It doesn't reflect, if a sale is lower than the assessment, well, it's a range, and we need to calculate it. When you have a number of sales, you can find out where it is. But if you've only got one sale, we don't know where it is in the range, so we can only assume that it's in the range. But when we build the models, we include all the sales, with the assessment reflecting the middle. So one sale doesn't reflect a model. Is not. We can't use one sale for a model. Even if there is only one sale, whether it's a residential group or condo group or non-res, one sale doesn't make a market. It gives you an idea of where it might sit, but for a mass appraisal process, we're required to model everything by range, and it's statistically tested. That's just what we do. So all properties in town. So on page 28, because the valuation date is July 1, 2025, so sales, because we use a range of sales, for instance, City of Calgary or even Cochrane or Edry, they'll use this 1 year's worth of sales because they got loads of sales, got hundreds of sales. But in a small town like High River, we still struggle with getting enough sales of certain groups. Right, the more sales we have, the more confidence we have in the appropriate value range of specific property types. So this graph included on page 28. This is what we call our time adjust. It's just a graphical representation of the change in value over time, specifically for condos, from July 2022 to June 2025. So obviously, up to 2023, the market's pretty flat. We're post-COVID. But from 2023 through these different time periods, the market's increased, and it kind of tapered off in December 24. So this is developed. It's a method that we used. It's from the same property that sells twice, or similar properties that sell twice during that time period. So it's a very stringent process to develop the time adjustment. It's actually audited by the provincial government and has to be approved before we can use it for valuation purposes. So as we're going through this presentation, you'll hear us talk about the selling price and then the time adjusted selling price. So if property sells, say, in January 2024, that's the selling price, and then a distance between the top of that graph and the red line is the adjustment. So all sales, whenever they occur along this line, they are all adjusted in the same manner, using a consistent method. And just an important note, the time adjustment is determined before the determination of each specific model. So this isn't the modeling process. This just suggests the selling price, the change in value over time. That's what this does. So on page 29, this is when we submit our assessment role to the provincial government through assets. This is to Alberta Municipal Affairs. It has to pass 2 stages of audit to meet the quality standards as previously mentioned. So we're talking about the residential quality standard. So our overall residential quality standard is that we met is 98.4%. So it passes the required standard for audit. And this is what's actually signed off by audit here at April 13th, 2026, Michael Lavager being our auditor at that time. So on page 30, in a review of the assessments in Sunrise Place, with the complainant and reviewing all of those properties and correcting the sizes, it made us aware of, like, typically for condos, we'll develop models specific to each condo. So Sunrise Place would have its own model, Sunrise Crescent would have its own value model, and so would Sunvale Place. But other appeals and the information brought up by Paul, the complainant, has brought to light that these three condo developments, Sunvale Place, Sunvale Crescent, and Sunrise Place, with condos as we've described for Sunrise Place, with the pictures shown on pages 10 through 15, they're very similar. They're about 1,030, 1,060 square feet with a single car garage, and they're very much the same. So in a review of these condo developments with the property owners through the inquiry period, through this appeal process, it seemed appropriate to combine these three condo communities into one value model. By doing so, we now have there's 23 sales of units similar to the subject property, or to the two subject properties. So these 23 sales represent 29% of 79 similar properties within these three communities. And these are shown below. So all these 23 sales are shown by the respective red bars, representing the assessment to sales ratio, with the overall result being 96.8%. So this value model passes quality standard. So the amended assessment as proposed is determined from the correction of the sizes and the rerunning of the model using all three communities. And it's the assessors, it's our not belief, but we believe the assessment is better representation now in communicating with the complainant and other inquiries. This is more representative of the market of these properties. On page 31, it just shows the dispersion of the respective sales. So that red line is about 96%. So of those 29 sales, some are above the assessment and some are below. So the development and use of the value model of these similar properties within these communities results in a consistent and equitable assessment and also meeting required quality standards. So on page 32, this shows all of the sales that we have from July 1, 22 to June 30th, 25 in Sunrise Place. So there are 9 altogether. So we'll just pick that top one. He'd sold 17th of April 2024 for $398,600. The time adjusted selling price of this property is $442,600. The current assessment at $418,400. Now the complainant did mention this particular sale, and it did sell twice. So this is the latter sale. This is the last sale in 24. Right immediately below this is the first time it sold. So it sold on the 28th of February 23 for $339,500. That time adjusted value is $476,400. When the amended assessment is $418,400. So the first sale, the first one is at 88%, with the second one being 95%. So in both cases, the assessment to sales ratio is less than 100. That's just the ones that sold twice. So this assessment to sales ratio is a range. And if you go to page 34, those red bars, each of these red bars represents each of those sales. So there are 9. So you see 80, a little less than 80. For the third one is about 90. Fourth one is 85, let's say. And there's a range. So the overall median assessment to sales ratio is 94.5. If we just look at the assessment to sales ratio in Sunrise Place regarding the amended assessment. So we've reviewed every one of these sales and tested to make sure they're arm's length. We've applied the time adjustment to these condo sales, like every other condo, like all the other 381 sales, which gave us on page 26, which gave us an overall assessment to sales ratio of 98%. So it shows that it's an appropriate time adjustment. Let's see here. So if these assessment to sales ratios were used just with Sunrise Place, the model would be 94.5. It wouldn't pass audit on its own because it's less than 95%. But when we combine it with the overall modeling of Sunrise Place, Sunvale Crescent, and Sunvale Place, the value, and that's on page 30, we get an overall assessment to sales ratio of 96.8%. And just for information also, on page 32, if we look at 38 Sunrise Place, it shows the role, the address, the legal, year built, and building size. So 1,062 square feet. Assessment per square foot is at 396. So with this model, the amended model we're applying to these units, it's 396 for 38 Sunrise Place, 398 for 32, 398, well again it's the same one. 50 Sunrise Place is 391 a square foot, 34 Sunrise Place is 391. They're all within a very consistent value per square foot. All being valued the same way, with a model that's statistically tested as passing quality standard. On page 35, this shows comparable sales between the communities of Sunvale Place, Northeast, Sunvale Crescent, Northeast, and Sunrise Place, Northeast. So we have 2 Sunvale Place at 397 a square foot. We got Sunvale Crescent at 397 a square foot. All similar sized units. The top one's 1,062. 702 is at 1,036 square feet. It's at 397 a square foot. 14 Sunrise Place is 1,057 square feet at 396 per square foot. And 32 Sunrise Place is 1,049 square feet at 398 square feet. So you can see that with this new valuation model, it's consistency applied using a value model that passes required provincial standard. As of July 1, 2025, these assessments are all have consistent values per square foot. Well, these are the sales. Sorry. And then on page 36, this shows comparable assessments between each of those communities, with the yellow arrow representing the value per square foot. So within a very close range. So these are comparable assessments within Sunvale Place, Sunrise Place, and Sunvale Crescent, showing consistent assessments, or a consistent application of the model for a consistent and equitable assessment. On page 37, the chart at the bottom of this page that was sent with everyone's assessment notices reflects the overall median assessment change from 2024 to 2025. So this will be the July 1 median overall change in each of these condominium developments. So in Sunrise, Sunvale Place, Sunrise Place, and Sunvale, the median assessment in 2024 was 393,750, and the median assessment in 2025 was 423,50, and that also being consistent with the proposed amended assessment and their respective values per square foot. So to conclude, upon the review of the Sunrise Place Northeast condos during the 2026 inquiry period, it became evident that there were historic data errors in the calculation of the 2025 assessment, specifically related to the sizes of the condo, suite, and the garage. Upon review of all the condo plans and blueprints specific to the Sunrise development, corrections were made as included in the submission. Originally and typically, value models for all condos are specific to each condo development. However, through discussions with property owners and upon review of comparable sales and similar properties within Sunrise Place, Sunville Crescent, and Sunville Place, it appeared appropriate to develop a single value model for the similar side-by-side condo units in each of these locations. The resulting value model meets the required provincial quality standards and is shown to be consistent and equitable within these three similar areas. And moving forward will be our standard approach to the assessment of these condos. It is a recommendation of the assessor that the amended assessments of the properties identified in this submission, as shown on page 17, I better check that, there they are used in the 2025 assessment year. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Complainant, you may ask any questions now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Stuart. I think Stuart's done a good job, as he did this morning, of explaining the process that the town has gone through to proceed with the model and come out with a valuation on these properties. And what I can't fathom and can't understand is how none of the values that are on these assessments actually equate to sales values within these three communities that he's talking about. And I think we've established that these three communities are at least similar. They're not identical, but they're at least similar. And if I can refer you to page 46.
Sorry, I just want to confirm, is that page 46 within your submission?
No, it's within the submission, the respondent's documentation.
Okay. Would that be this page?
That would be that page, yeah.
Okay, let me just see if I can rotate it.
Obviously, I don't have access to all of the data like the town has, so I was only able to collect certain data from various residents that I'm representing for the Sunvale properties, but I do know them for Sunrise, which is the ones that I own personally. And the tax assessments there, even for 2025, never have we achieved those sales in any of these three areas that we're talking about. So if you look, I know it's all good. You need to be looking at page 47 as well, which highlights all of the sales that I was able to obtain off the MLS for these three areas: Sunrise Place, Sunvale Place, and Sunvale Crescent, which are the three areas that Stuart has determined that we're grouping together now for an evaluation purpose. None of the sales since 2022 have ever reached the assessment prices that he's now saying their model has calculated. And even the sales that have occurred since then haven't reached those values either, as I made in my opening statement. What I'd like to know is, it's great that we have these models that we follow and that are legislated, but is there any type of calibration done after those models have come up with the calculation to look at the actual sales that are taking place? Because in these three communities, I can't see that any calibration will have been done, because none of these sales are anywhere close to those values that have now been determined. So that's my question. Has there been any calibration done after the model has been done? And I know that, you know, you've got to meet these legislative requirements, but the reality is, does this model represent market value? That's what we're trying to establish.
Thank you, the complainant. Thank you, Madam Chair. To answer the question, I'll kind of answer with an example. So let's say we have these three communities, and then we have, let's say there were no sales in Sunvale Place, 0 sales. So, and they're all, we've identified, as the complaint says, they're all similar properties. So there are no sales in one of these communities. Do we say, well, They're not. What are we going to use if there's no sales? We have. So the value for that similar community comes from the sales in the other properties. The model sales that come from the other two communities. We use those so that we can apply a consistent and equitable value on those properties that don't sell. And in a nutshell, that's what assessment does. We take the sales of properties, we call them indicators of value. We develop a value model process for the properties that sell. It's statistically tested. Does it reflect those specific sales for those similar properties correctly? And once it passes that statistical test, it's just applied to the properties that don't sell. We have no control over what sales occur where. We can't go, well, there's only 2 sales in a place. What are we going to do? In either way, we need sufficient sales for us to develop a valuation model that makes sense, that is capable of being an appropriate reflection of the market value of properties. That's our mandate, to be a properties that are market value using mass appraisal. We have no control over the sales. Obviously, we use 3 years worth of sales to get as many sales as possible. The more sales we have, the more confidence we have in the valuation in the models that are developed, that are statistically tested. So, in the example of, say, either Sunrise Place or one of the other communities not having any sales, we take all those similar properties that will be we've developed a value model that includes all of them now, not even separately. Now they're all the same. So they're all on the same level. So they're all identical, and with a consistent valuation process, mass appraisal, the sales are time adjusted, all the condo properties, every property is adjusted for time because it has to be July 1. So we followed the provincial legislation, we followed best practice using mass appraisal. And even if in the example of if there were no sales in one of those communities, if there were one sale, it could be high, it could be lower, but it's just one sale. And we talked about that coefficient of dispersion. It's in there somewhere. It's in that range of value. Just because there's only one sale, it doesn't mean it's the highest or the lowest. We have no control over that. All we're required to do is look at all the sales of a consistent group of properties by location, develop a model that's statistically tested, following all the provincial regulations we have, and then that's the assessment. I understand the argument that these couple of sales in 22 or some in 23, but we just for time and location or right, and there's all kinds of other property groups we're looking at similar properties, a similar process, a similar and a consistent statistical test. So that's how the assessments are developed. That's the only defense I have. Right, we're bound by legislation, bound by mass appraisal, as imperfect as it may be, right? But that's a standard by which we complete the assessment process.
Thank you. I will now ask any members of the board if you have any questions.
To the assessor through the chair, so we're just taking the sales. Are we now looking at quality of the homes that are involved in these sales? Are all the condos in that area the same quality?
Yeah, they're all identical. They're all assessed exactly the same. They all have different. It's market adjusted depreciated cost, so they have different ages, different sizes, but the style and quality of construction is consistent throughout. There's not sufficient differences that would cause any to be different than another. Not in the assessor's opinion, anyway.
Madam Chair, may I interject?
Go ahead.
I obviously have the privilege of being on the condominium board of Sunvale Place that we spoke about this morning, and I'm also on the condominium board of Sunrise Place that we're now assessing. The quality of the homes in Sunvale are actually superior to the ones in Sunrise. I know because I own 2 of them. And they have different finishings inside. They're laminated countertops rather than marble or anyway. It's a little bit different. The flooring is very different. You got plush wooden floors in Sunvale. You don't have the same flooring in Sunrise. The property that they've got in the picture is obviously one that's been renovated and actually looks very nice. But not all of the properties are exactly the same, and that does determine a different value. It wouldn't be significant, but it might be enough. I guess what I would have to say is that even though the model seems to suggest that these values should be accurate, on this diagram here, or this chart here, we can see sales that have taken place over a period of years since 2022. And all of the comparable sales, we would consider these three communities as called Sunrise Meadows. Am I correct?
I don't know that. I know them by specifically by each one, but you're probably right. Yeah.
Sunrise Meadows is what I understand that these three communities are referred to, but it's Sunrise Place, Sunrise Crescent, and Sunvale Place. So these three communities are the most comparable properties available in High River because they are most similar, but they are different. The sales that I've got in this chart depict arm's length market transactions between willing buyers and willing sellers. And actual sales are the strongest evidence of market value. Not a model, not a formula, actual sales. And every comparable sale supports values significantly below these assessed values. Every single sale. Now, I gather that there's a time adjustment factor, but even the sales that have occurred since July 1st, 2025 are well below this assessment value. So obviously something is broken within the model, and that's our position. It's a consistent pattern that we're seeing. It's not one sale within this community. All of the sales that I've got on this document demonstrate that we're not anywhere near those values. Now, yes, it's over a time period, but not any one of the sales that took place within that 1st of July 2024 to 30th of June 2025 hit that value at all. And I mentioned at the very beginning, Unit 50 was sold just a matter of weeks. On May 9th, it sold for $380,000, 7 weeks before the legislated valuation date. And yet, the town's value for that property is $416,000. Well, that's a significant jump. And so we contest that the model doesn't seem to be working. It's not representative of what actually is happening on the ground. And I don't understand it. I don't know what the model does in its calculations. I just see the numbers of the actual sales that I was able to obtain details of, and they're not equating to what Stuart is purporting. Anyway, I rest. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sorry, I just want to clarify. You said Unit 50. I don't see that on this list here.
It's not. This particular unit was not on the MLS. It was actually data that the town provided me. So it must have been a private sale, is what I assume. But I will contest as well, like I did this morning, that doesn't matter. The people that are residing in these homes are all mostly retired folks, right? They're mostly retired folks. And there's going to be a lot of estate sales in these communities as a result of that. That's just an apparent fact because of the age population of the people that are living there. They're either staying there till they die, or they're moving from there into a care facility of some sort.
Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, I have several here. Just to confirm, what page number is that for the location you were just talking about, 50? Because I
it
don't
was-
see it in this report when I reviewed it through lunch.
That's a great question. It's in the rebuttal that was sent to us from the city, so it's somewhere in this document.
Okay.
And
I don't know if we can do like
I'll see if I can find it.
a control search function on it. Okay, I'll just jump to a couple other ones here. To the complainant here, you discussed a few times in regards to direct sales. Most recent sales is this 50, and then the prior ones, just to confirm with you, is 42 Crescent Place, and then 32 specifically. Is that correct?
42 at 375,000.
And
yes.
then 32 was your
That's
other
at
direct.
398,600. Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Those are your direct comparisons that you want to equate to this.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for confirming. In regards to the condition of the property itself, as you've already stated before, but I just want to make sure it's clear to everybody online here, what is your depiction of the condition of the properties, the subject properties? Would you recommend, or would you advise as it's fair, good, excellent condition, or referring to, does the roof need to be replaced? I understand the interior may have small adjustments, but
No.
major structural issues.
These properties are about 4 years older than the properties that we were talking about this morning in Sunvale. They're from 2012. They're all of a similar condition. The roofs are all in good condition. Obviously, the exterior of these properties are managed by the condo board, not by the individual tenants or owners. And yeah, they're all in good condition.
Okay, thank you.
The interiors are slightly different.
Thank you. To the respondent, just to confirm for myself here, and I know the complainant did bring it up here. In regards to the time wait, what's the actual wait? I know you guys did a competence to confirm if it hit the medium through the government, but what's the actual wait? When we're applying a wait of a sale of 2022, what's the actual weight itself? Like, how are we adjusting that specific number versus a sale of 2024?
Yeah, it's
I couldn't find it in the page. Reviewing it through like an hour before. If you have information for me on
there's no specific. It's developed from the, like I say, on page 28 of our submission. There's
Yep.
a graph. There's a graph there representing the time adjustment. So there's no set standard. That time adjustment is calculated specifically only from those condos, from all the condos here in town. There's not in High River this is it. The time adjustment is calculated from the sales, and so there is an adjustment. That's a coefficient. We don't.
Yeah, I get
we
that you
don't,
can come with a statistical regression to build for a difference of timing. I'm just trying to understand where it would be aligned, or is it just exponential?
At the end of the day, this is an estimate of assessment, an estimate of value using mass appraisal, and it's tested. So our models are tested. The statistical test is 95 to 105. So that's after the time adjustment is calculated, determined. Then that's how the respective sales are adjusted. But then modeling is specific to similar groups. And I just want to add to that. The complaint did say that Sunvale Place were better units, but similar. So, the assessment is not, we can only divide properties into so many small groups, and then we have no sales left. So it's mass appraisal for similar groups. If we really get into the weeds and want to divide stuff into hundreds of groups, good luck trying to come up with a sale price, with a model. So that's why that's why I think we would be in agreement, that I've heard that from the complainant also, that these three communities are very close. That's why I say this is a good idea moving ahead to make them all the same, right? But they're not perfectly identical. It's just residential groups. Imagine trying to play someplace like Water Tower or the Southwest, looking for tight groups. Good luck, right? We have to divide them up into consistent, similar groups, and not into smaller groups. So it's mass appraisal for as consistent groups as we can get, right? They don't have to be identical, but similar.
I appreciate that. Okay,
Sorry, just for the purpose of this, if you're not speaking, can you please turn off your microphone?
Apologies. That was myself. In regards to the assessments, similar question to the complainant, to the respondent here. When you went to the properties, just to confirm through everybody live streaming this, when you checked out the property itself, would you consider the condition good, fair, of excellent condition, no major faults or issues, just to confirm, of the property?
I believe, I haven't looked at everyone specifically, but for this group, I think we believe we'll all have them as average. They're not that old.
Okay.
Right, they're not that old to have experienced significant depreciation, which we don't already, it's already considered in the age of the condos, whether they're built in 2012 or built in 2016. That there's an adjustment for depreciation in the market adjusted depreciated cost method. So we haven't had any feedback from property owners of any extreme condition. Like we have them all as average.
I appreciate that. Thank you. That's all I have for a question.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. You had at one point wanted the assessed value at 360, and you said, now taking into all that I've learned, I'd like to see an assessment of what?
Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity to answer the question. Just before I do answer that question, I do want to go back to what Taylor had said about the one property, Unit 50. It's found on page 32. You'll see that the ASR on page 32 was 109%, and that is the property that we learned about being sold at $380,000. Anyway, just wanted to bring that back to your attention and answer that question. Based upon everything that we had learned during this process, we recognize that we may have been a little bit, keen to get a lower value, and so we feel that the Sunrise Place properties sell for less than the Sunvale Place properties typically. That's what we've seen over time, and so we did have a reduced value, but when we went through this process, we're accepting now that, hey, a lot of the values that we're seeing these properties be sold for is around that price point. And so it doesn't seem to matter that the Sunvale Place properties might be a little bit better interior. They're still being sold for a similar value to the ones in Sunrise. And so hopefully that answers your question, and that's why we've adjusted what we're applying for.
So to confirm, 380.
Does that yeah, 380, yeah. Does that answer your question?
I believe so. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions? That appeared like a rebuttal, but thank you. So now I will invite the complainant to speak to a rebuttal, disclosure, and any closing remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Really, I think we've repeated ourselves a number of times that we recognise that the town has an obligation to follow a mass appraisal model in its calculations of these assessments. Our argument is not that they haven't done their job, it's that these mass appraisal calculations don't actually equate to what's actually happening in reality. And the evidence we've provided shows that none of those homes will fetch the values that they're currently being assessed at. And I think, I don't know whether or not it's a time adjustment problem in their model, or whether or not there's some other miscalculation in the model that's currently being used, but we affirm that our request to have the board determine a value that equates to what the market will bear should be what these properties be assessed at as we move forward. Thank you.
To the respondent, any closing remarks or rebuttals for last considerations here?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to reiterate, my favourite saying is I don't write the music, I just play the piano. We just reflect what happens in the marketplace. We have no control over what the sale is, what value it is, when it's sold. We are required, when we reflect, we've taken all of the sales, all the actual sales, all the sales the complainants used in the submission, actual sales, they're in our analysis. If it's sold, even ones, as been made clear, the ones that aren't on MLS, we include. We have to include all of them. So they all are included, not some of them, all of them. So they are in the model, and the models are statistically tested. We've wrapped both these three communities together. There may be some subtle differences between the three of them. But mass appraisal, there's a range of value. So that's our requirement, and it's for the distribution of tax. It's not for borrowing money. It's not for any other purpose, but for the fair and equitable distribution of the tax load, using ad valorem principle of valuation, right? So we've met the standards. We've followed the market sales. We've made appropriate adjustments for the change in value over time. We've developed a model that is developed from the three communities. And we've even shown that if those models were used specifically within Sunrise Place, those assessments wouldn't pass audit. They're 94.5% or whatever it was. But together as a group, they pass audit, and that's what we're supposed to do. We can't, if we develop, if these were the original 2025 assessment going to asset for approval, they wouldn't pass. So these are the rules we have to follow, using mass appraisal, developing models that are statistically tested, that represent a range of value. We've shown that we show you assessment, it's at 96%. Some sales are higher, some sales are lower. If you were to pick one of those sales out, like one could be lower, one could be higher. We use all of them, and the middle represents the whole. So we've done that in this case with the amended assessments for Sunrise Place. So I respect the fact that a recent sale might be lower than the current assessment. It's after July 1 if it's after that time, and it's one sale. This whole next year is a whole new year. We drop 2022 sales will drop off. We pick up the 2026 sales. It's a brand new model. If the market's tapering off this year, that would be reflected in next year's assessment. Again, it's all the sales for one point in time value. So I respect the opinion. Its mass appraisal it's unique to assessment. It's not an appraisal like a regular appraisal in the market. Our role is to reflect the typical market. Our mandate as per legislation is market value standard, using mass appraisal, passing the required quality standards. And this has been a great process, right, to both Sunvale Place and Sunrise Place, with the patience of people like Paul, right, to help us shed some light on maybe improving things as we move forward. That's what it's all about. We don't stand in a cone of silence, and we're not open to any new information on how to value things. It's this process and this process. We respect that, right? That's how we make our assessments better and decisions of the board. So this is a great process. I've enjoyed going through this with Paul and the people in Sunvale Place, and like I say, we're just following the rules we have, and this is just our estimate value for mass appraisal process. So I appreciate your time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
One question for me personally, because it follows the mandate of the province and it passes the test, is there an opportunity that the test valuation overall in High River is too high?
They're all the models are developed specifically for every single. Like we don't have a value model for condos. Like we don't it's stratified by property type within each community. So those models developed by property type and in each community, they're all at 98%. So you take all of those and compound them together. like, I remember the example of this mass appraisal, all of the 1,300 and some condos, like they were all in the different model groups, all 98%. So they're all, believe me, the audit are very, very stringent. They pick it apart, and so they should, because people pay tax based on this. So we should be scrutinized here, and with you, and with the province. So the rules are very strict. I would say that no, there's a range, of course. Like, we always have people come in, and if a property is sold for $350, and we've got it assessed at $370, they come in and say, "What's going on?" Well, there's a range, and so we can't be lower than everyone's selling price. It's not possible. So I'm confident that we've met the standard. We've passed the audit. We've passed that test, and at this level we're getting more specific, right? And that's fine. You know, it's like I say, it's a good learning opportunity as well for everybody, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The reason I come to that question is because a lot of the market ratio reports that were provided, for example, it was your page 26, but the overall document page 59, the mean came in for the square footage at 312 square feet. And I'm wondering, the valuation of square footage as we do an assessment would be like the replacement cost of a property.
Could you ask that question again, please?
Sorry. The reason I'm asking that.
Which page?
So it's your page 26.
All right. Yes.
So the price per square foot, the mean here, you have it $312. Dollars.
Oh yeah, this is just we don't use that. Like this is just a reflection. This is not, the numbers on here are not, they're just we don't use that. We don't use that. It's just a number. It's just of this group. For this, like, this is all the condo sales. So this doesn't reflect anything. It's just information. We wouldn't use that 312, because this represents every condo in town. Apartment condo, like a Sunvale condo, every condo. This is like we don't use that to calculate assessments, because this is all the condos in every community, all the strata groups. This is not a measure of value. Like, it's not. Yeah, we wouldn't use that. It's just
Although it does form part of the evidence before us.
Yeah, it's not. What's specific to these condo groups is what's been shown today, because these are different. Every condo. This is only used as an example. Like, for instance, if you let's go to page 30. You'll see it's for this group. So this is for all of them. It says 423. Right, and the proposed assessment's not 423. Like, it doesn't mean it's a different group. The groups that matter is the group that we have used right here for 96. That's not the measure. It's the group. The measure of the value is the model that's built from the assessment divided by the selling price for all those 23 sales, to arrive at a median ASR of 96.8%. That's the destination right there, the median ASR. That's the quality standard. What you're referring to, this price, median, mean, like, there's all these numbers. They're just another way to look at the same number, but they're not used in our analysis. These are irrelevant. The number the quality standard we're required to meet is that median percentage, because that's a statistical test of this model for similar units of sales within the 3 years as of July 1, 25. That's our standard, and that's what's been communicated here. Like, all this, we've talked about the sales specific to these 3 communities. They're similar properties, and that's our destination, is an assessment rule, the total assessment value. We don't say a median square footage and apply that. This is just the result. Right, it's just a mass appraisal process.
So it's an area, essentially, no different than you having.
If you would use that as a measure of comparison, fine. Anyone can use whatever they want. But for us, the destination is the total assessment divided by the selling price for all of the sales in the model. Does it pass the quality standard? And on page 30, the median ASR is 96.8%. That's our requirement. We're market value assessment for the total value of the property.
So it would be fair to say that the mean is 423 and the median is 422 of what?
I wouldn't use those numbers. I'm not suggesting. I haven't used that in this submission. Right.
Okay.
We're talking about the valuation model that's applied consistently within similar properties.
So just me personally, so you don't want us to assess the square foot value that is being presented in some of this documentation?
We're defending the total assessed value of the property, not the square foot value of the property, right? We could use the garage, and say if the garage based on the garage size, you could build a model on that, right? You could build a model on anything, but we're saying we've corrected the size of those condo suites. The assessment comprises of the suite at a certain square footage and a garage square footage. They come up with a value for a total, and that total for us, that total assessment has to be divided by that assessment divided by the time adjusted selling price of these 23 sales has to be within quality standard. That's how the model's built. That's how we're defending it today. We're not defending it on any other metric.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair.
If there are no further questions from the board, this is an opportunity for either party to make any final comments before we conclude this hearing. And please note that additional comments are not required if you feel your position has already been heard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't really feel like I need to make any other comments. Appreciate everybody's time this afternoon. England are 1-up, so sorry, Hank. And thank you, everybody, for your time. I appreciate it.
Similar to the complaint, Madam Chair, we've shared lots of information. We have no other further comments to make. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you. The board will deliberate following the conclusion of this hearing and will issue a written decision in accordance with the legislated timelines. Generally, parties can expect the board decision to be within 30 days of this hearing. After the decision is finalized, the clerk has up to 7 additional days to distribute the final notice to all parties. This concludes the Local Assessment Review Board hearing for July 15th, 2026, and this hearing is adjourned at 2:28 p.m.